Hello, good evening. My name is Katrina Messenger, and I'm the founder of Connect DC. And I'm here tonight on the new moon to deliver what we call my new moon message. Uh, I've been feeling very agitated recently, so tonight's message may be slightly more ranty than normal. So put on your seatbelt, friends. We're headed toward a bumpy ride. In my hometown of Washington, D.C., the morass lifted suddenly last weekend. It was as if our collective sentence had been commuted and suddenly we could all breathe free. There was literally dancing in the streets all over the world. But considering how the entire DC region was traumatized after the last presidential election, it makes sense that for a brief period, we felt such relief. We who have been walking, talking, eating, and sleeping in the miasma of this administration justifiably raised our voices to celebrate. And although the relief was palatable nationwide, we are not out of the woods just yet. Beyond the pandemic and climate change and police brutality, we are still facing the dying echoes of this fascist regime that refuses to go peacefully into that good night. And so our work actually continues. Must continue to build toward the future we want to live in while connecting and creating resilient communities of transformation and change. Food security, basic income, and universal health care are the tools we need to survive just the next few months. It's no longer enough to wait for a plan to fix everything. Communities are in dire need right now. Stimulus checks are helpful, but folks on unemployment need extensions and more money. Free vaccines are good, but folks have had to put off so much medical care. There will be a backlog of health concerns beyond COVID. And foreclosures and evictions need to be halted again, nationwide. This is not the time to throw anyone into the nightmare of homelessness. Minimum wages need to be livable, especially for the newly discovered essential workers. And it looks like PPE may be a job requirement long past the current scare. And it's absolutely wonderful that so many folks have been giving away food to stave off widespread hunger. But many underserved communities will still remain food deserts, even as the jobs return. And defunding the police seems so radical until one realizes how much our community care we as a nation leave in the hands of people with guns. We have always needed more social and caseworkers, more counselors and therapists, and more mediators and peacekeepers. We seem to get the adage that when all you have is a hammer, everything comes to resemble a nail. But what about a community response that only comes with a gun? White America especially needs to learn our true national history, and truth commissions or at all levels would be a great start. But can we at least start by telling the truth about the drug war, Jim Crow, slavery, and the longstanding war against First Nations people? And criminal behavior at the top should be met with incarceration just like it does at the bottom. We need proof that no one is above the law, not even a former president. And in truth, the actual science of climate change is actually not that difficult to understand. So what we actually need to do is to take out of the discussion the folks who make money from devastation of our natural world. Their inclusion in the conversation muddies the clear facts. And can we even find a way to depoliticize our response to the pandemic? Gosh, what a nightmare. And even the 70 million or so people that voted for Trump should realize that folks are hungry, sick, and losing their homes. And even if they fail to have empathy for others, surely even they can see how their own families are suffering. And so, yes, we do have a lot to do to get beyond the current emergencies. And the gods know we had better get prepared for a smarter version of Trump before there are marches with tanks down Pennsylvania Avenue. Because what is needed is something this whole country hasn't had for a very long time: wholesale citizen engagement beyond elections. You know, America, as we call ourselves defiantly, needs a megadose of truth, plus decades of reparations and justice before we can ever relax our vigilance. And so, as we catch our collective breaths and toast each other with spirits, do not delude yourself into thinking that we are in the bright days of spring. As the Stark clan repeatedly warned in the Game of Thrones, remember that winter is coming. It rather famously ain't over yet. And the reality is that this was just a test run. All that work you have been doing, pace yourself. We're going to be at it for a long time to come. Thank you. I'm not sure there's anyone here to give comments, but oh, Skylar is here. Skylar is here. So, you know, Angela, we could just have a quick conversation ourselves. You have to unmute yourself, darling.
You know, every day. Every day.
Tavin says it's a lot. How can we help and participate in this work? Many of us have been doing the work all along, ever since 2016. Some of you have been out there talking to people, making community, looking after your neighbors, registering people to vote, collecting food for the hungry, finding ways to march for Black Lives Matter. All those things, you know, we're going to be at this for a while. Don't think just because that Biden won the election that it's over. I mean, we still got to get Trump out of office. And we have all these people who are dying. So there is work. There's work. There's a ton of work to do. And I know there are people on here like Jill, who's out there almost every weekend. And it's a lot of work that needs to be still done. And quite frankly, we still haven't quite figured out how we got Trump in here in the first place. Seriously. Do you realize that if he'd just been a little bit smarter, what could have happened? We're pretty lucky that the test run was with someone who was quite frankly incompetent at ruling, not for real.
Mm-hmm.
So we have a second chance, but we surely cannot rely on just that marginal vote to let us sleep well at night. What do you think, Angela?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things that you said about, you know, leading competently, he's really good at, you know, spreading propaganda and making a lot of noise, which, you know, twizzes up his followers to no end. But when it actually comes to a sustained effort at leading, it's not him, but it's the people who enable him. And I think what I see is, you know, all of us as a community, you know, working together, relying on each other, leaning on each other when we need to, and making sure that, you know, people are fed, people are homed, you know, people are safe. And that we have these circles, you know, the messages that you do, the full moon messages, the Sabbats. I mean, those are our ways of keeping our community together when we're separated by COVID.
Well, there's even more to it. I mean, the thing is, we need to actually look at how we barely were able to hold on to a free election.
Yeah.
We got to look at all of those systems, the systems that do elections, the systems that
Mm-hmm.
protect our mail service, the systems that protect our election machines and everything. We got a lot of systems. We got a lot in this government that was based simply on gentleman's agreement.
Right.
So that, you know, Trump could walk in and there he wasn't actually required to do so many things.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, so we have a lot of work to do to clean this mess up. And yeah, no sitting president should be able to do the things that he did and got away with. Think about it. Those are criminal acts. And there was nothing with a person like McConnell in the Senate. There was nothing that could be done.
Right.
And he's literally packed up the U.S. Supreme Court. So there's a lot of work to be done, in addition to the work we knew about prior to this.
Right. And I think some of it also starts very young. It starts with education. I mean, I'm one of the things. I'm from Oklahoma. You know, I still have contacts, folks that live there, and I heard a couple of people say, "Oh, well, you know, now that the election's over, let's put this behind us. Let's, you know, politics is boring and mean." And it's like, politics is like it shapes every aspect of our life, but yet we have this idea that it's separate. There's just the private sphere and the political sphere. And I guess if you're, you know, if you're not a part of a marginalized community, it's really easy to go back to the way it was, or it's very easy to ignore the implications or to find politics boring. It's like,
It's not an issue of whether or not politics is boring or entertaining. It's it is in fact a responsibility of a citizen. That is part of our civic and collective responsibility. We are part of this nation and therefore have a responsibility to ensure that those we entrust with authority to do things that actually have our interests at heart and are properly, you know, protected from their own ignorance from doing things that are dangerous. So yeah. And so it's not over. Yeah, you're absolutely right, Esther. It's not over. I mean, it's looking after our neighbors, building communities. That's the work we should be doing. In addition, just like what we did when I was one of the feminists pushing women to run for office, we have got to get people to run for office, right? Now, you know, I'm a radical left wing, but you cannot ignore the implications that there are the people who are the most marginalized paid a cost for us not paying attention.
yes.
And you're absolutely right, Angela. It's untenable that folks decide that it's because they're not in danger, that everything can go back to whatever it is that mythological everything normal place that they live in, that the rest of us don't live in. Let's see, somebody has a question.
Pavan.
Yeah.
How do you see it? Can you see it there? Okay.
Yeah. It's an important question to answer in the coming years. How do we cultivate a culture that more clearly values and understands that responsibility? Well, you know, I recognize that I'm not quite as old as some people on the list, but I'm old enough to know that I actually had a civics class when I was a child in school, right? Who taught us about how the federal government, even and as I understand it in the states, they learned about their state government and how it was set up. I don't know if it's still done, but it needs to be really understood and how things happen, and that it is a responsibility to be knowledgeable and engaged with what is happening. Yeah, not every single day. You don't have to have the, you know, the punch sheet. So and so said this and so did that, but there has to be a way that we utilize media in a proper way to bring these things to light that are important. To highlight the things that need to be discussed. These bills are coming forward. Here are some of the issues. Here are some subject matter experts on all sides of the equation to give you information, right? I mean, what we get now is we get political wonks who are actually either have clients who have money in the game or they're the source of the bill in the first place because it will impact them fortuitously in their business. These are the people that we have explaining things to us in the media. That's not helpful. Yeah, Jill says that her women's circle met today and we discussed supporting our young people and establishing new communities. We are dismayed that 70 million Americans believe that these last 4 years was acceptable. Yes, yes, yes. It is, and that's the thing. It's like we have to live in this country with them, right? Right. And one of the things that's pretty interesting is these people didn't just pop out of from under bridges or something, or come out from under stone. These people had always been here, right? And many of us from marginalized communities, we are very aware of how flighty the temperament of white American can be when we show them what is actually happening in their world, right? And there's always a backlash. Like Trump was the backlash for Obama. I mean, the civil rights movement, we got the drug war. I mean, you've got to understand how these things work, right? And so it is very much an understanding that this is not the time to leave marginalized communities on their own, right? Because we're going to suffer the backlash.
Mm-hmm.
And if you are an ally, you need to know that and step up.
Mm-hmm.
A real ally, a real co-conspirator, as we say, not just an ally, but a co-conspirator, you know, working toward liberation and equality and humanity, human rights, you know. Somebody says, Michaela says,
Mm-hmm.
I'm 19 in high school, those types of civics classes were electives. Oh, jeez. Yeah. I, well, you have to say, I went to Catholic school. We didn't have these things called electives. So, but yeah, that we need to understand that when we step out of the commons as citizens, it is those who are the most vulnerable who pay the price. And you need to understand that. And we have so many people who are vulnerable right now. Yeah, I mean, a lot of the business owners act as if they're the only ones who are suffering, right? But it is not the only thing. And yeah, it may be really hard to come back into business, and I can feel that pain, having been a business owner at my own self at occasion. But right now, we have people dying, thousands per day. So we need to get our priorities straight, right? And so those of us who were able to bring ourselves forward to beat back this fascism, you know, Goddess bless you. Thank you. It ain't over.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Have a little drink, toast amongst your friends, then let's get back to work. Because we're going to have to be at this for a while before we can take a break. We have learned something very important in these past 4 years. We learned how easy it is to move from the facade of democracy. Did you just take me off? Yeah. From the facade of democracy to the bare knuckles of authoritarianism. And so we must not allow that little sleeping piece of information to get tucked up under some place where we don't look at it or understand what it means. Because all that means is that Black people, First Nation people, brown people, poor people, people who are disabled, lesbian, gay, trans, bi, queer, intersex, non-binary, all of us get thrown under the bus. And so that's what you need to understand. There is no going back or giving up or saying, oh, thank goodness, it's all done. That sick, cold system that all of us had to face these last 4 years, right? We got to see it in its bare knuckle capacity. But that's the system that the marginalized are eaten alive by day after day after day. If you are in the streets because this is It is not okay to have children in cages. It's not okay to ban people because of their religion. It's not okay to push trans people out of the military. It's not okay to have police doing shooting practice in Black neighborhoods. If you are willing to step up for that, then it's not time for you to sit down. Because what you are saying, if you're going, all my work is done, is that our lives don't matter. So you can wear buttons and you can shout from the rooftops about Black Lives Matter. But if you walk away from this election thinking your job is done, you're saying our lives don't matter. That's the reality. And yeah, is a stark, cold fact. Winter is coming, and we need to pay attention to what is happening in this country and what is happening in this world. We can never go back to pretending like we don't know. Don't go to sleep. Stay awake. Thank you, and good night.